Hello everyone, this is Nitpicking Nerd and this is my review of episode 6 of season 2 of Star Trek Picard, which is absolutely terrible. This show is getting worse and worse with every episode, and at this point I would even say it's worse than season 1 of Star Trek Picard, because at least season 1 had some little bits of special effects. It was a space show, they were going to other planets, and yet in this season everything feels so cheap and lazy. I think in this episode there was not even a single special effect of any kind at all, and it was just people standing around and talking, and absolute filler, absolutely nothing going on. Even the editing of it, even they did this gimmick that they start the episode at the end, like a lot of shows do when they show you something interesting in the beginning to keep you hooked up till the end, and so they showed the most interesting part in the beginning to keep you watching until it gets to that point. And so they start the episode with showing Picard lying on the ground bleeding as if he's dying or something, and honestly I just don't care. I'm so shocked to hear myself say this, because Picard used to be maybe my favorite character in all of science fiction and maybe one of my favorite characters of all time. I'm talking about the TNG Picard, but what they did with him in this show made him so pathetic, so insignificant, that I honestly don't care anymore. And add to that the fact that they already killed him off, so I have no sense of danger to the character, because even when they kill him off they bring him back, so there is no sense of tension or something like that. So what's the point to have a scene like that at all? Would anyone believe that Picard is actually in any danger? And so this was ridiculous. And what's worse is that they did the same trick 3 different times in this episode. They keep cutting to that scene of him lying on the ground dying, and then cutting back to the present. Like, they keep showing us that flash forward, and then they say 34 minutes previously to the start of the episode, and then some later again they show again a flash forward of Picard lying on the ground, and then again 15 minutes before that, and then again the same trick, and it's boring, it's filler, it's the same stuff over and over. It was almost comedic in how bad this was. And add to that those flashbacks from his childhood, which we've seen from the very first episode of this season. And we keep seeing that in almost every single episode. He keeps having the flashbacks to his mother getting beaten up, and it's the same clips, it's the same footage again and again and again. So this was ridiculous. What they should have done is maybe each time show a little bit more to reveal the mystery, if there is any kind of mystery to any of this. So each time you show something new, show it from a different angle at least. Show us some little bit that we didn't see before to help us piece together the puzzle of the mystery. Of course, here probably there will be no mystery, it's just a ridiculous backstory which they added for no reason. So Picard keeps having those same flashbacks to his sad childhood when his mother was in trouble. And I keep thinking, wait, he's 99 years old. Did he suddenly start having those flashbacks, or was he having them his entire life? So, you know, every time we saw him in TNG, every time he was on the bridge, giving orders or being in any kind of danger or anything, he always had those flashbacks of his mother being beaten up. Like, it's ridiculous, it doesn't fit, it doesn't make any sense for him to be suffering from this PTSD so late at life when we never saw any hint of that before, when it's about something that happened in early childhood, and he never dealt with it, he never talked with anyone about this until now. And maybe, hopefully, they will reveal, maybe these are memories from the alternate timeline of the evil Picard. Maybe that way it will fit continuity-wise, because maybe he's now having these new memories popping up, which is from the evil timeline, because that would make sense in the evil timeline that parents beat each other up or beat their children, and that's why he grew up to be a genocidal general and all of that. And so we have 3 different flash forwards of Picard lying on the ground, then cutting back to before those events, and also in between we have the flashbacks of his childhood, which is the same exact footage again and again and again and again, so nothing new at all. So it all feels like filler, like they didn't have enough stuff for this episode and they had to draw it out somehow, and that's why they add these flash forwards, the flashbacks, and recycling the same exact footage. Even that bit when Jurati was sitting handcuffed and seeing the Borg Queen, we saw that exact scene in the end of the previous episode, but now we see it with the different dialogue. Like, it feels like they're just recycling the same footage. And even with all of these tricks, this episode is still really short, it's less than 40 minutes long. So it just shows me that they don't have any actual story, there is nothing here, it's like all just filler. They're just standing around at this party for most of the episode and nothing happens. So, Jurati got herself arrested on purpose because she somehow magically knew that she will be brought into the control room, and she's been handcuffed to a chair. and the security guards are right next to her, and yet she keeps talking with the Borg Queen, and these guys don't seem to notice her talking with herself. And then she pulls some kind of hypo spray or something from, I don't want to know from where she pulled it from. I guess they didn't search her body, or she hid it in her lady purse or whatever it's called. And then she sprays the room and the guards get knocked out, and it doesn't affect her. I guess she gave herself an antidote previously, so that kind of thing I don't have a problem with. If it's easily explainable and it's logical, then I'm not going to nitpick it. And so obviously she gave herself an antidote because it was all part of her plan. So she made the guards fall asleep because she is going to hack into the system to allow the other members of the team to get in. The most ridiculous part in all of this is that they have the Watcher with them in the team, the one who looks like Laris, without any explanation, and yet they all forgot that she used to have the power just 2 episodes ago to control other people. She can actually possess other people and control them like puppets, and then they don't remember anything after that. So why doesn't she use that power to take over those guards and to release Jurati, or to simply hack into the system herself? So she just forgot that she had that magical power 2 episodes ago. So no one ever mentions that. There is no explanation why she doesn't use that power anymore. She just forgot she has that superpower. So it all depends on Jurati. So she knocks out the guards with the gas, and then Jurati tries to get to the key which is in the pocket of one of the guards, and so she jumps with her seat toward the guard, and I keep wondering, so how exactly will she get into his pocket to get it out? I guess with her leg. She will use her leg to open her handcuffs, I guess, like Mystique in the X-Men movies. And then the Queen tells her, oh, you can just snap the handcuffs off. Just use your power, which I give you new powers, and you can suddenly just snap the handcuffs off with your strength. And then she does. And that's already so stupid, because even if she has Borg nanites in her body making her stronger, how come her bones don't break when she snaps the handcuffs off so easily? And so all of this is ridiculous. And what's more ridiculous is that Picard and his team are already in the line trying to get into the party and about to get scanned in a few seconds. And they're constantly in contact with Jurati because they have invisible comm badges now, I guess. And that's something I was suggesting previously, when they were going around the city and losing their big communicators all the time, and I was saying, why don't you put subcutaneous communicators like was done in a few episodes of TNG, and that way no one will know you have a comm badge and no one will hear you talking with each other. And so suddenly in this episode they do have this technology, so how come they didn't use it previously? So they're in continual contact with Jurati, so they know that Jurati haven't yet finished her hacking, and yet they're still progressing toward the opening, about to get scanned by the guards in a few seconds, and they cannot seem to stop. Like, they're in the line, and they tell Jurati, Jurati, you only have a few seconds to complete your hacking, otherwise we'll get arrested for being frauds and imposters, so please hurry up, it's only a few seconds until we get to the guards. And I keep thinking, then why do you go to the guards before she did it? Like, couldn't you wait a little bit outside for her to let you know that she did it and only then to go in? Like, what's the rush? Like a few more minutes to make sure she does it before you get arrested? Wouldn't that make a little bit more sense? And so this was ridiculous. This is kind of a forced and artificial way to create some tension and stakes and all of that, but it doesn't make any sense, and so it's ridiculous. So I keep thinking, so stop progressing, so just get out of that line. Say you forgot something in your car and go back. Go outside for a few minutes and then try again when she finishes the upload or whatever she needs to do. So this was so ridiculous. This is laughable. This doesn't make any sense. It's as if it was written by an 8-year-old who doesn't know basic common sense. Like, so they're progressing toward the guard and they cannot stop. Oh, Jurati, we don't have any more time. You only have a few seconds. I cannot stop myself from progressing toward that guard. I cannot say I forgot something and move out of the line. No, you have to do it in 5 seconds or we're all done. All the mission to save the entire galaxy will be screwed because I cannot get out of this line approaching toward the guard. Jurati, you have 5 seconds. And then they get to the guard and he actually starts to scan their bracelets, and Rios gets scanned, and then some other guy's details show up, some 60-year-old surgeon who looks nothing like him, and the guard tells him, you don't look 60 years old, and the picture is of some other guy, and Rios just tells him, oh, scan again, it must be a mistake. And then Jurati is uploading the fake details, but nothing about this scene makes any sense, because did they come with their own bracelets which they replicated, which are empty? Why is there some other guy's details showing up when they scanned Rios, if they came with their own bracelets which are empty of information? Or did they steal the bracelets from other people in the party, which makes no sense because with the facial recognition system, wouldn't it detect two people with the same name, so wouldn't that raise any alarms? And so I guess they stole it from people who were invited to the party but didn't show up. Did they beat them up and tie them outside the building? Or what? So nothing makes sense. So whose details showed up when they scanned Rios if they came with their own bracelets, unless they stole the bracelets, but then we didn't see that happen, and so nothing makes any sense. And so Jurati uploads the right information and suddenly Rios gets a pass. Suddenly it's his own picture which shows up, and then they all get in without problem, without any suspicion. And then Jurati is constantly talking with the Borg Queen throughout all of these scenes, and the comm channel is open all the time apparently. We don't see them switch anything on or off. And yet, none of the crew members hear Jurati talking with herself as they're supposed to, except for one time when she tells the Borg Queen, I will find a way to destroy you, and suddenly Picard does hear that. So why did he hear that, but not all the other times when she was talking with herself? And the rest of the episode she keeps talking with the Borg Queen, and so from the perspective of all the people around her, she's talking with herself, and yet no one apparently notices, and no one ever approaches her, despite the fact that she's wearing a very revealing dress, but no one approaches her. There was that strange scene of a bartender staring at her cleavage in a creepy way, so that was in there for some reason, without any purpose to it, I guess to show that men are nasty, that they're staring at cleavages, and so that's so bad, I guess. And Renee Picard is getting drunk because she's so depressed, she wants to quit the mission. She's texting with Q, her therapist, who keeps trying to convince her to quit the mission, and so she's in tears, and meanwhile the rest of the cast are just enjoying the party. Like Rios is enjoying the foods, and he keeps saying how the food is so great there, you know, because I guess it fits what we saw in the previous season when they kept insisting that the food from the replicators tastes like shit. It's made from recycled crap, and so it tastes like crap, and so this kind of contradicts the scenes we saw back in TNG when there were people from the past who got unfrozen in the present, and they seem to be amazed by the replicator and enjoy the taste of the drinks there and all of that. In Star Trek Picard, for some reason, they keep insisting that the future sucks, that replicated food tastes shitty, literally. So Rios is having a blast at this party, and he keeps talking about how the 21st century is great, and then he smells a cigar, and he says, oh, the cigars are real, they're so great. It's funny, he never actually lights it. I kept waiting for him to light a cigar, and maybe someone should approach him telling him you're not allowed to smoke inside closed buildings or something, but he never actually lights it. So it was just like in the first episode of the season when he was on the bridge all the time with a cigar in his mouth, but never actually smokes it, so he just likes to hold it, I guess. It reminds me of that scene in Back to the Future 3 when Doc was about to drink something and he kept rambling about the future until someone asked how much did he have, and then someone said none, he just likes to hold it. So that's what Rios reminds me of, because he never actually lights the cigar. He only likes to hold it all the time for hours on end, I guess, and he keeps talking about how much he loves the 21st century, how great it is, as if he totally forgot that in the previous several episodes, this guy got kidnapped for being a Mexican and abused in jail and about to be deported, and all of that is apparently completely didn't affect his view of the 21st century, which suddenly he loves for some reason, and I think it's a setup to the fact that he's going to stay in the past in the end of the season. That's my prediction. I don't think it's a coincidence that he falls in love with that doctor who happens to be single and happens to have a kid already, and so I guess him staying with her in the end will not affect the timeline because they already have a kid, and so it's the perfect setup for a happy family right from the beginning. It's so convenient. So my prediction is that he's going to stay in the past in the end of the season. Maybe they want to clear way for the TNG cast, which are apparently coming back in the next season. So maybe they don't have enough room for everyone. They have to get rid of some of these characters. And meanwhile, Raffi is looking at all the drinks at the bar, and she resists the temptation and just wants some water or something. So at least that was a nice reference to the previous season in which she was a total drunk. And at some point I remember her deciding to clean herself up. So at least there's some consistency, some continuity with that. And despite not being drunk, she sees a vision of the ghost of Elnor as if he's in the party. So basically she's nuts. She keeps seeing dead people. And then Picard wants to go and talk with Renee to cheer her up, I guess. That's the whole point of this whole mission, is to make sure that Renee is not depressed enough that she will cancel going on that mission, because she's so important, she's the key to everything, and so Picard plans to go and talk with her, but then he's stopped by Dr. Sung. And so at least this moment actually felt interesting, because For a change, Picard actually gets to talk with one of the villains of the season, unlike in season 1 when he never actually talked with or even knew of any of the villains of season 1. He never actually interacted with any of them, which was kind of silly. So at least in this season he did talk face to face with Q and now with Sung, so at least we have some kind of head-to-head confrontation between the hero and the villain. And so Sung talks with him about Q, saying that he will stop Rene's mission at all cost, and Picard just tells him, oh, you cannot trust Q, and that's it. He never actually tries to convince him not to listen to Q. And then some lady who's in charge of this party approaches Sung and says, oh, you're one of our biggest contributors, you're one of the biggest donations to NASA, you're now on the board of directors of NASA, let me give you a VIP tour and whatever. And I kept thinking, wait, in the previous episode they said that he lost all his funding, that he's broke, that he will be unable to continue his research, and suddenly he's one of the biggest contributors to NASA and he's on the board of directors, and so I guess he will try to use his influence to prevent Rene from going into space. And then he tells this lady to basically arrest Picard because he's dangerous. And so suddenly all the guards in the area, I guess they all heard it, they all have super hearing, suddenly all the guards in the room start approaching him, and Picard calls his crew for help, and then Jurati with the Borg Queen initiate a nano EMP pulse to knock all the electricity out. And because everything suddenly went slightly darker, Picard is able to sneak out of the room and to go after Rene, and so I guess all those guards after him are completely blind if it gets slightly darker. And then Jurati comes out singing to distract everyone, I guess, and suddenly a projector activates on her, and so if all the electricity is out, how come that projector is still working? I guess the Queen planned all of this, and so she kept that one projector working somehow. And then the band in the hall starts playing according to the song that Jurati is singing, and so what a well-practiced band that they are immediately able to play any song that fits whatever some random lady starts singing, they will start playing accordingly. So this whole scene is absolutely ridiculous, and then it turns out the Queen wanted to give Jurati a rush of endorphins because that's what will allow her to completely take over Jurati. And then we see Jurati's eyes turn black, because without that, the audience will not understand what's happening. We always have to see someone's eyes get covered by black goo to know that they're being possessed or controlled by someone. Otherwise, we won't get it, even though they're saying it in the dialogue. The Queen says that she's now taken over Jurati completely. And also the whole thing with her seeing the Borg Queen as an imaginary friend while wearing this red dress, I think it might be a reference to Battlestar Galactica, which had that character of that Cylon lady who was also wearing a red dress, who kept appearing in someone else's mind as if she's the imaginary friend, and so here it's like a reverse of that, so I'm getting the sense that it's inspired by that or is a reference to that. So anyway, the Borg Queen said that that was her plan all along, and so I keep thinking, wait, if she was planning to backstab the crew from the beginning and just wanted to take over humanity in the past, then why did she even bother to take them to the correct time to fix the timeline if she was never going to help them fix the timeline? So why did she even bother putting them in the right place? So anyway, we see Rene went away to cry in the Museum of Astronauts, and we see Picard follows her to pep talk her so that she won't quit the mission. And the idea of this scene was actually pretty good, because that's the kind of thing that the character of Picard was best at. He had so many great scenes back in TNG when he had great dialogue with a lot of wisdom, convincing people to do the right thing and so on, and so he was great at that. So the idea of the scene is perfect, but the execution is terrible, because the dialogue itself is once again disappointing. There is no substance to it. All he basically tells her is that in the darkest moments there is still some light. You have to follow that light, Rene. Even if it's just a glimmer, you have to follow that light. Don't give up, Rene. And then it completely changes her mind. Because she had that little 1 minute long pep talk with Picard, suddenly she will go into space. Now she won't quit the mission. So this was also ridiculous. Again, the idea of this scene was good, and even the acting and all of that is good, but the dialogue is terrible. The dialogue has no substance. There were no clever words of wisdom here. There was no clever speech. There was nothing here which will make someone change his mind so drastically. So after 1 minute talk with Picard, suddenly she changes her mind completely. Suddenly she will be brave. Suddenly she will go into space. The only moment I did like in the scene was when he told her to look up. just as his mother told him when he was a kid, when he was scared. And so she sees a model of the same kind of spacecraft, which I think we saw in the opening of Star Trek Enterprise, right before the shot of the Phoenix going to warp. Right before that we saw some shuttle, and I think it's the same model which they're showing us here. And so they talk a little about that spacecraft, and so that was a nice reference back to Enterprise. They walk outside the building for some reason, and then we see the evil Dr. Sung in his car, and for some reason there's no security outside anymore, even though in previous shots in the episode we saw there's massive security and lots of journalists and lots of police and all of that. Suddenly it's all empty completely outside, so no one is watching, I guess, so that Sung will be able to get away. Otherwise it will be inconvenient for the rest of the season, and so for some reason all the security and all the people outside disappeared, and Sung is now driving his car to try to kill Rene Picard, because that's what Q told him to do. And then the 99-year-old Picard shoves away Rene Picard, who is a super astronaut, who was sailing around the planet at age 8, and who finished university at age 9, and who became a test pilot at age 10, and she's supposed to be in the best shape of her life for this mission. But no, it's the old man Picard who shoves her away, instead of it being the other way around, because she's so shocked by the car approaching her, even though she's supposed to have super reflexes, being the best astronaut ever and all of that. But no, the old man Picard is the one who shoves her away, and then he gets hit by the car. And I think this whole scene might be a reference to that TOS episode, The City on the Edge of Forever, in which a woman had to have been killed by a car in order for the correct timeline to be restored. And so here it's like a reverse of that. I'm still kind of hoping that maybe later on they will reveal that Q was actually trying to save the timeline, and that Picard and crew are actually the ones who messed up the timeline without realizing it. That would be a clever twist. You could still blame Q for it because he's the one who put them into the situation, but that would be clever in showing that this was all some kind of a test, similar to how it was in All Good Things when he put Picard into a situation in which he created that paradox. So that would be kind of clever if they do that, but I doubt they will, because this whole season was so simplistic, there is no cleverness to anything, and I'm still pissed off about the previous episode when they released all those prisoners and basically changed the timeline because it was the right thing to do in the moment, but not one of the characters even considered the possibility that maybe they shouldn't be doing this because they are changing the timeline by doing this. Because if all those guys were supposed to get deported and then they prevented that and allowed them to get back into the United States, so what if one of those guys kills someone? And even if they're all good people, if one of them has a kid with some woman that he was not supposed to have, maybe that kid will grow up to do something which was not supposed to happen. And so what they actually are doing in this whole season will create a different timeline, even if they fix the main event they're trying to prevent or fix or whatever. So none of this makes any sense. It would be much more clever if they reveal later on that it was actually Picard and his crew who messed up the timeline and not Q who was actually trying to save it. So maybe Rene Picard finding some life form on the moon of Jupiter and bringing it back, maybe that's what will cause the evil xenophobic future, because maybe that life form will be evil and that's what will turn humanity into xenophobes who will be scared of any alien, and that's why they will become an empire in the future. So maybe her mission will go wrong because of everything that we see here now. So maybe she was not supposed to go on that mission or not to complete that mission the way it's going to happen. And what was clever back in TOS when Kirk had to stop himself from saving that woman despite being in love with her, because he knew that she's supposed to die in the original timeline, and so he was willing to make that necessary evil and that personal sacrifice for the sake of the future. So he had to let a terrible thing happen because he knew that's what's supposed to be happening, and he's not allowed to change it, because by changing it he might destroy the future and create an evil future. And so he had to hold himself from saving her despite wanting to save her, and that's what made it so dramatic and memorable and intellectually clever, because it was all about that morality debate of doing a necessary evil to prevent an even bigger evil and all of that. And so that was actually clever, unlike in Star Trek Picard when they were in a similar situation in which the correct thing to do would have been to slam the door shut on the rest of the prisoners to ensure the rest of the timeline goes as it was originally, but instead they decide to let all the prisoners go without any of the characters actually questioning that decision. And so that was so terrible and so stupid in the previous episode. So anyway, back to this episode, Sung tries to drive over Picard, and then the old Picard shoves the young Picard out of the way and gets hit himself. And I'm still wondering how will Sung fit into all of this, because in the evil dystopian future we saw a holographic statue of him, and we even heard his voice saying a safe galaxy is a human galaxy. So maybe in the evil reality he actually succeeded in his genetic tests, and maybe humanity embraced eugenics, and maybe that's why humans were able to conquer all the other aliens in the galaxy, because humans augmented themselves with genetic engineering in the evil future. And that's why there's a statue of Sung in that future, but none of this was explained yet. I guess we'll wait and see. So anyway, Sung somehow manages to escape without any police following him, even though he just tried to kill a famous astronaut in a big event with lots of security and a big crowd outside, but no one ever noticed him, I guess. So he drives back to his house and talks with his daughter, and he keeps referring to her as his life's work, that he did all of this to preserve his life's work. And so she realizes that something is off about him, and then she breaks out of her room, I guess. We can kind of summarize that he locks her in her room. Apparently she had no internet connection her entire life, because she never googled her father until this day. Only after she breaks out of her room, she sits at the computer and googles her father, and then she sees that he's a mad scientist, that his license just got revoked because of his illegal genetic experiments. So I keep thinking, wait, if that's the case, if this is on the news, then how come he's now the board of directors in NASA and is having VIP tours at NASA and all of that, if he's considered to be a mad scientist who just got cancelled and all of that? So nothing makes any sense. So apparently she never had any internet inside her room ever, and only after she broke outside somehow and sits at his computer, she's able to discover the truth about him. And then she gets into his personal files, which I guess he keeps his computer totally open to anyone who comes in. He has no password or anything. And he has a ton of self-incriminating evidence on his home computer, which is open to anyone, in which we discover that he actually had a ton of genetically engineered children, and that Corey is only the latest one, that all the previous ones died because they had all kinds of genetic defects, because his experiments were not perfect. So I guess he's trying to create the perfect human or something, and that she is only the latest example, and she's watching all the clips of all the previous children which he bred, I guess, who all died horribly, and she's only the latest model. And I keep thinking, wait, when he was talking with those people who revoked his license a few episodes ago, he was openly telling them about his daughter who has a genetic illness and all of that. So if his daughter is the product of some illegal experiment he did and basically grew her in a lab or something, so how come he's telling everyone about it? So everyone knows he has a daughter, so how come no one wonders who is the mother exactly? How come no one suspects him of anything? He's so open about everything, and yet he's apparently a monster who's been growing these children in his personal lab for all that time, and they all die horribly one after the other, and no one ever suspects him of anything, so nothing makes any sense. And all of this also reminds me of that movie I Am Mother, which was about a robot who was raising a daughter, and the twist in the end of that movie was that it's not the first time she tried to grow a human, that there were previous versions which she had to terminate because they were imperfect. So this stuff with Sung is really similar to that. I guess at least it explains the coincidence that the daughter of a geneticist is also suffering from a genetic illness. So at least it's now explained that it's a side effect of something that he did. I think it would have been more clever to say that maybe he gave her that illness deliberately, simply so that she will not be able to go outside without his permission. Anyway, this is all kind of cheesy and corny and cliche, but it was still probably the best part of the episode, because it was kind of fun in a dark science fiction horror kind of way, and so that's probably the best scene of the episode. So back to Picard, who's still lying on the floor after being hit by the car to save Renee, and they say that the mission was a success because Renee goes into quarantine as she's supposed to, so I guess she has no internet connection when she's in quarantine. She will be unable to talk with her therapist Q while in quarantine, so he will not be able to change her mind anymore. Or maybe she's not allowed to quit the mission after she goes into quarantine, and so they all seem to be so sure that the timeline is fixed now only because she went into quarantine successfully. And I guess she never reported to the police that she saw an old man being hit by a car. She never told anyone, like no one knows about any of this, because Rios and the others are able to sneak Picard out of there without any authorities showing up, even though it's such a big event with all kinds of journalists around and all of that. But no one noticed an old man saving the most famous astronaut ever, and she never reported it to anyone, I guess. And so they take Picard away, and they say that they cannot take him to a hospital because they will ask for an ID. And I keep thinking, wait, if someone is in emergency situation, they don't really ask for ID in the hospital. They will ask it later, but why not first take him to a hospital to get treated, and then you can just beam him out of there or sneak him out. And they do say that they cannot take him to the biobed on the ship either, because the biobed is not a doctor. And that's also funny because just in the previous episode, didn't they treat that wounded cop on the biobed? Didn't Jurati manage to heal that wounded cop by using the biobed? She even said she took some of his organs out without any problem and all of that. So apparently the biobed is able to treat a lot of conditions, and I guess they should have said it has no power left or something, like previously in the season when they couldn't save Elnor from his injuries because they didn't have enough power, because the queen was taking all the power or something. So I guess they can come up with excuses, but you know, if the ship has no power, how come they are able to beam themselves through the entire planet from France to LA, and how were they able to replicate all the fancy clothes they are wearing right now, if not for the replicators working? And so if replicators are working, can you not replicate medical equipment to treat Picard, even though in the previous episode you were able to treat that wounded cop without any problems on the biobed? And if replicators are working to produce clothes, how come Jurati was so cold that she had to go sleep in the mansion of Picard near the fire on some nasty old couch which was there for a century, full of worms and rat feces and whatever? She was willing to go and sleep on that couch near the fire instead of simply replicating some furry coats for herself or something to keep warm. So in this episode they say the biobed is useless, and you know, I'm okay with the idea that medical holograms might not exist on the ship, because the ship they have is actually from the evil dystopian future, in which I guess medical assistance was not the priority. They seem to be more like Klingons, all about the war and all of that, and so I guess people were expendable in the evil timeline, and so they didn't invest anything in the medical equipment. So I guess that could make sense. So they need to take Picard to a doctor, and how convenient is that Rios happens to know that lovely Senorita doctor which he's in love with, which he wants to stay on Earth with in the end of the season. And so what a coincidence that they need her again, and so they take Picard into her clinic. And then she uses her equipment on Picard, but because Picard is positronic, it causes her equipment to malfunction. I guess that makes sense. If positrons are anti-electrons, then giving an electric shock to him might cause some kind of strange reaction in the equipment. But somehow it still cures him, it puts his heart into the right rhythm. And this scene also reminds me of that scene in Superman Returns when Superman was dying and the doctors were trying to revive him, and when they gave him an electric shock, it shorted out their equipment. And so I guess maybe that scene inspired this scene, because as often with the new Star Trek shows, they often imitate other movies because they don't have any original ideas of their own. And then the doctor suspects something is off about Picard, and she asks if he had any transplants, and they say he had all of them. So that was kind of funny. And then the doctor just leaves. She decides, oh, I don't want to deal with this patient anymore because his body seems to be fine, but he doesn't wake up for some reason, so I'm just going away. And she leaves all of them there. And then they discuss what to do with Picard, because his body seems to be fine, but his mind is not waking up. And the Watcher scans his brain with her pen-like device, which is similar to the one Gary 7 was using to render people unconscious, which is strange how she never used any of her advanced technology when they were at the party, when it could have actually been useful, but she never used any device to knock anyone out or to possess anyone's brain or whatever. She never used any of this stuff at all. But now she wants to use it to go into Picard's mind to figure out what's troubling him. And so I guess in the next episode she will go into his mind, and then we'll see what those flashbacks of his childhood are. Maybe we'll finally get an answer to what the hell is going on. And for the first time, when we once again see the same flashbacks, we see some new bits. We see what looks like some kind of monster attacking his mother. So maybe it's all in his subconscious mind. Maybe it's not a literal monster which was there, but it's how his brain interprets it. I guess we'll wait and see in the next episode. And it's funny how Raffi is against the plan. No matter what anyone ever suggests, Raffi will always be against it. She loves to argue. No matter what idea anyone has, she will always be against it because she just loves to argue with people. Maybe she just doesn't want to save Picard because she hates him so much, apparently, so she's against the plan to go into his mind. And then the episode ends with Jurati in the red dress walking toward the city to try to assimilate it, I guess. So that's the end of the episode. So I already said what I think about it in the beginning of the video. I think it's mostly crap. It has a few good moments here and there, like that reference to that shuttle that we saw in the intro of Enterprise, and there are a few good jokes like saying that Picard had all of his organs transplanted. That was kind of funny because his brain was basically transplanted into this android body. So there are a few moments which are decent, but overall the episode was pretty bad and boring and stupid. So that's my thoughts on it. Let me know what you think, and we can discuss all of this in the comments below, and I will see you all next time. Bye bye.